Hello friends, I am Dr. Ajay Yadav. So today we are discussing FMG recall questions. So whatever you people could send me, I could find 5 questions, maybe slightly more also. So with time we may get even more questions also, but right now I could find 5 questions. Questions I'll not say very easy, but I'll not say very difficult also. But definitely, if you have thoroughly gone through the subject, then only you would have been able to answer. That is for sure. Means you have to understand. Now, FMG pattern, what I found is more or less getting nearer to the NEET pattern. The questions are more or less clinical, so you have to have application of your knowledge. So anyway, without wasting any time, let's start straight away with the first question. A sick patient in ward needs supplemental oxygen. It will be given from which of the following cylinder? You can see the colors of images of the cylinders they have given. A, you can see the image, that was B, C, and D. So actually, regarding these cylinders, two very important things that you have to know. One is the color, and second is the pressure. And color is not only important from a question's point of view. Color is also very important from your clinical point of view, because color is the only way to identify a cylinder. And definitely I was expecting that something related to cylinders will be asked, whether pressure, color, or maybe I was expecting they may ask you capacity and how much the cylinder is going to last. So something was expected. So you're lucky enough that they asked you the easiest questions related to cylinder, that is color. That is very basic, that everyone must know. So color of oxygen cylinder, I'll just tell you. So oxygen cylinder color is black body with white shoulders. White shoulders. Second cylinder is nitrous oxide. So oxygen is obviously very very important, because that you will be using not only in operation theater, you will be using in ICU, you will be using in your wards. Nitrous oxide is stored in cylinders which are blue in color. And third cylinder which you can remember is Antonox. Antonox, which is a combination of 50% oxygen and 50% nitrous oxide. So it will have blue body. And what does this blue body indicate? Indicate nitrous oxide with white shoulders, and of course the white shoulders indicates oxygen. So color is very important. Now I think you can easily identify which this cylinder is. Obviously this is oxygen cylinder, black body with white top, and this is blue cylinder. So this is nitrous oxide cylinder, and this is Antonox. I told you, blue body with white top. And this is carbon dioxide cylinder, but this carbon dioxide cylinder is no more used in anesthesia. However, you may see carbon dioxide cylinders in operation theater, and there they are being used for gas insufflation for laparoscopic surgery. But from anesthesia side, yes, we are not using carbon dioxide cylinder. Long before, maybe few decades back, we were using in anesthesia, but nowadays they are only being used for gas insufflation. So now it is very well clear that uh, you need supplemental oxygen. So you will be needing this cylinder. So the answer is A. Other than uh, color, second thing I told you is very important is the pressure. So pressure, and for pressure there are so many units being mentioned in your books, but you need not remember all those units. You just remember two units, that is kilogram per centimeter square and pounds per square inch, that is PSI. So you can remember relation in between these two, and if required you can accordingly convert. So 1 kilogram per centimeter square is equal to roughly you can say 14.5 pounds per square inch. So in a full oxygen cylinder the pressure is 2000 pounds per square inch, which if you calculate in kilogram per centimeter square will somewhere come around 140 kilogram per centimeter square. Nitrous oxide, the pressure is 760 psi. And Antonox, easy to remember, bear the pressure of oxygen. Why? That's a very simple rule of physics, that if you mix two gases with different pressures, the mixture will always exhibit the pressure of higher gas, and that is why Antonox is exhibiting the pressure of oxygen, that is 2000 psi. So these are two very important things you have to know, that color of oxygen cylinder is black body with white shoulders, pressure is 2000 psi. Nitrous oxide is stored in blue color cylinders at a pressure of 760 psi, and Antonox, which is a mixture of 50% oxygen and 50% nitrous oxide, is stored in blue color cylinders with white shoulders, blue indicating nitrous oxide and white indicating oxygen, and the pressure is 2000 psi. Now, another important thing I like to discuss here, which is again very important, is the capacity of cylinders. Normally, you can say oxygen cylinders, they are available in many capacities or many sizes, I would like to say better. But two which are very important that you should remember is, one is E, that is attached to anesthesia machine. So that is attached to anesthesia machine, and the capacity of that is around 660 liters. Okay, this is B, and this B, the capacity is around, you can say, 1600 liter. And third is very large, H, oxygen cylinder of the human size, that is H, that is around 7000. So these capacities now become important. Why? Because you should, when you are using cylinders, actually this made this capacity to become very important in COVID crisis, because when you are using a cylinder, you should know that how long it's going to last. Like for example, say I am giving 10 liter oxygen to the patient per minute. Okay, so how much is my oxygen consumption? 10 liter per minute means in 1 hour will be 10 into 60, means I am giving 600 liters of oxygen per hour. Okay, so if I am using E cylinder, how much long it's going to last? Just for 1 hour. I am having B type of cylinder, how much is going to last? Around 3 hours, 2.5 hours, and H cylinder around 11 hours. So this I have to know. So this also becomes important. So as far as your question is concerned, it was very direct question from DBMSI notes, Gurukul notes. You can clearly see. You can see it's clearly given cylinders and their color as well as pressure. So color you can see black body with white shoulders, and this is oxygen cylinder. Okay, pressure and everything I already told you. So this is directly from Gurukul notes. And in fact, all these questions has been discussed in eGurukul app and been mentioned in your notes also. Next question. A COPD patient in ICU was on oxygen therapy with mask with 2 liters of oxygen. He was found to be hypoventilating. His PCO2 on blood gas analysis was 64. Which of the following should be done? Increase FiO2, decrease FiO2, start BiPAP, intubate and start on ventilator. See, one thing you should know, that what are the indications to put a patient on ventilator. So indications to put a patient on ventilator, I'll not go in details, but the common indications you can say, usually on the basis of blood gas analysis, ABG, PO2 less than 50, PCO2 more than 50. However, nowadays there is little change in this. They say don't go by PCO2, better go by pH. And if pH is less than 7.3 due to accumulation of CO2, that's an indication, and that is called as permissive hypercapnia, but no need to go in that much details. So simply you can remember PCO2 usually more than 50 can decrease the pH. So PCO2 more than 50 is a very standard thing you can remember. However, as I told you that PCO2 large enough to decrease pH less than 7.3 is the usual indication. Then patient become tachypneic, very common indication, and usually respiratory rate more than 35. However, in COVID many centers they say more than 30, but standard is 35. And if patient is not able to generate enough tidal volume, means tidal volume less than 5 ml per kg, that's also indication to put a patient on ventilator. Now our general impression is putting ventilator means intubating and putting on ventilator. That's actually, you can say, misconception. So putting on ventilator can be non-invasive or invasive. Non-invasive, called as non-invasive ventilation, is very commonly used. This is given through mask, and invasive means intubation, so that you all know. So non-invasive means given through mask. A tight fitting mask is there, all of you would have seen. A tight fitting mask is there which is tightly strapped to the patient, and then positive ventilation is delivered. So invasive is a big details, so again we'll not discuss here. So non-invasive, uh, basically you can say there are two modes, that is continuous positive airway pressure and bilevel positive airway pressure. So this is called as CPAP and this is called as BiPAP. Continuous positive airway pressure means airway pressure will always be positive. So what is the advantage? Normally what happens during expiration, alveoli collapses. But if you give positive pressure even during expirations, means inspiration there is always positive pressure. So this is, just don't compare from the normal inspiration. Normally when we are breathing, inspiratory pressure is negative, and even during inspiration it becomes more negative. But positive pressure ventilation is we are giving positive ventilation through patient airway. So we are keeping continuous positive pressure in airways so that alveoli will always remain open and gas exchange will place even during expiration. So that is called as CPAP. So obviously this will improve the patient oxygenation. Now, if you want to give some inspiratory support to the patient also, then you have to add some positive pressure during inspiration also. So bilevel positive pressure means positive pressure during both cycles of respiration, during inspiration as well as expiration. So you are giving positive pressure during expiration means alveoli will remain open during expiration. Gas exchange is continuous pressure. Giving positive pressure during inspiration means you are giving better distribution of the gases, or you can deliver better tidal volume to the patient. So definitely wherever possible, we always prefer BiPAP over CPAP. So nowadays, actually mostly you will see patients on BiPAP. So BiPAP, obviously, so with the same, I told you, non-invasive ventilation mask is there. Then a small box you all would have met. I think those who have done internship would have seen that a small box is there, and through that box we can deliver CPAP or BiPAP. Although ventilators can also deliver BiPAP. And invasive ventilation, I told you, then you have to intubate. So actually wherever possible, if possible, we will always be preferring first with non-invasive. But there are certain indications that where we cannot give non-invasive. Just for a matter of common sense, I tell you, if patient is severely desaturated, or say in cardiorespiratory arrest, obviously cannot give non-invasive ventilation. So you will be only giving invasive ventilation, immediately intubating the patient. Or if patient is apneic, you cannot give. So if patient is not severely desaturated, means patient oxygenation is decreased, patient is in respiratory failure, but not severely desaturated. So you can try with NIV. We want to avoid the complications of intubation, particularly ventilator associated pneumonia. So we try with non-invasive. Previously, we were using, actually before COVID, we were using non-invasive only for, you can say, type 2. In fact, rarely of the rare of the rarest, type 1. Type 1 is oxygenation failure, and type 2, is hypercapnic failure, that you all must have read in much detail in your physiology. But in ARDS, we actually are using it in type 1 also very frequently. So these new concepts are definitely going to change. But yes, standard is that it is preferred for type 2. Now I think this is enough background to solve that question. Now we'll reread this question. Patient is COPD. COPD patients usually are type 2 respiratory failure. They retain carbon dioxide. They are on oxygen therapy 2 liter. So 2 liter is a reasonable oxygen therapy for COPD patients, because you must have read in your medicine section that they are dependent on hypoxic drive to keep their respiration, you can say, stimulated. So if you try to increase their oxygen, suddenly they may go in respiratory arrest. So there you can say respiratory centers are set at lower PO2 level or higher PCO2 level little than normal. So 2 liter means patient is on reasonable. If you have been giving 5 liter, 6 liter, definitely high. So 1 to 2 liter is reasonable, and patient was found to be hypoventilating. And hypoventilating means retaining carbon dioxide 64. Now what should be done? Look at the options. We should never increase the FiO2 in COPD patients. Other patients, if normal ARDS patient, I would have increased, and nobody will keeping a ARDS patient, hypoxic respiratory failure type 1 patient on 2 liter. But COPD we can't. And decrease, it's already on the lower, how much you will decrease. So what is our best option to wash out this carbon dioxide? We have to increase the minute volume of the patient. And how we can increase the minute volume of the patient? Either by non-invasive ventilation or controlled ventilation with intubation. So definitely this patient is not going in respiratory arrest, so no need to intubate. So we will try with non-invasive ventilation. And non-invasive ventilation, I told you, nowadays BiPAP is definitely preferred over CPAP. And majority of these COPD patients, you all would have seen also that they are on BiPAP machine. Even many of them are on home therapy with these BiPAP machines. So best is start BiPAP. And that's what, if you see in notes, indications for mechanical ventilation, PCO2 is more than 50, and here PCO2 we have seen is 64. So that is one of our indication you can say to put on ventilator. But again, to remind you, putting ventilator does not mean putting a tube. We can put the patient on ventilator with mask also. And this BiPAP also has been largely discussed, you can say, during the different modes of ventilation section. Okay. The next question. A young patient underwent surgery under GA with oxygen, nitrous oxide, and desflurane. Just after extubation, the patient started to desaturate. On auscultation, there are crepitation. What can be the most common cause? Pleural effusion, ARDS, negative pressure pulmonary edema, atelectasis. You know, one of a very common immediate complication of extubation is laryngospasm. And what is the most common cause of this laryngospasm? Most common cause of laryngospasm is secretions. So what the secretions do? Secretions will irritate the larynx, which goes in spasm. So secretion is really a very big headache in anesthesia. One, they can cause laryngospasm, and laryngospasm obviously will lead to immediate desaturation of the patient. So this is a, you can say, acute emergency which should be managed immediately, otherwise patient can die or can have severe hypoxic brain damage. Then second problem of the secretions is that later on these secretions can block some of the segments of the lung, and that segment become atelectic, but that is later, post-operative period, and that can also lead to hypoxia. But laryngospasm is really an emergency which should be managed immediately. And what all we should do to manage laryngospasm? And you would have seen always, if you have attended some general anesthesia case and you have attended that case till beginning to last, although nobody does that, because even when we were going to OTs, we were always be keen to see what's happening on surgical side. Although nobody was allowing you to stand even in a perimeter of 5 meters, but still we were trying to see what's happening in surgery and nothing being seen what is happening in anesthesia. So if you attend the GA, you will see that before extubation, we do thorough suction. And why I'm telling this, and I think why they put this question also, because sometimes when you are doing ICU duties, you have to extubate the patient. Before extubation, patient should be thoroughly suctioned. Otherwise, these remaining secretions can cause laryngospasm, which if you are not able to manage, waste your total effort. You are planning to extubate the patient and he desaturates and require reintubation or even can undergo arrest. So what should be done to remove this laryngospasm? First, you can give positive pressure ventilation with mask. You already removed the tube. Positive pressure, strong breath, I will say. What happens? Just go for head tilt and chin lift position, and that will open the airway, and with mask give a strong positive breath. This positive breath may push this secretion inside, relieving the laryngospasm. If not, then you can give a small dose of a muscle relaxant, that is succinylcholine. So succinylcholine will relieve the laryngospasm. It is a muscle relaxant. Now here they have not directly asked laryngospasm, so definitely I will say this question to be really a difficult and indirect question. But I told you, nowadays questions are getting tougher and tougher. So what this laryngospasm will do? Laryngospasm is upper airway obstruction, and upper airway obstruction, you know, when patient try to take spontaneous breath, will cause negative pressure pulmonary edema. So if a patient obstruct, again upper airway obstructed, that will cause negative pressure pulmonary edema. So this is negative pressure pulmonary edema which has happened because of laryngospasm. Okay. Pleural effusion, there are no chances that normally happen in a young patient undergone surgery. ARDS will not happen immediately, and there is no strong reason to have ARDS also, and that is going to take hours and hours. And atelectasis can cause hypoxia, but not immediate hypoxia. It will occur after few hours or maybe after 6 hours, 8 hours in post-op period. Okay. So in complication chapter, this laryngospasm has been discussed nicely. Laryngospasm leading to negative pulmonary edema, including management, that all well discussed in complications of general anesthesia chapter. Which of the following anesthetic agent is best for cardiac patients? Halothane, isoflurane, nitrous oxide, sevoflurane. Inhalational agent for cardiac patient is isoflurane. Why? Because it minimally decreases the cardiac output. Actually, all inhalational agent that decreases the cardiac output, including isoflurane, but this decrease is minimal with isoflurane, making it as an inhalational agent of choice for cardiac patients. Now, just I like to utilize this opportunity to tell you just for other conditions also, cardiac, I told you this. So just we can summarize in fact. Cardiac patients, inhalational agent of choice, IV agent of choice, and muscle relaxant. So inhalation agent of choice for cardiac patient is isoflurane. IV agent is etomidate, and muscle relaxant is vicuronium. Okay. Respiratory means say asthma or COPD. Inhalation agent of choice is sevoflurane. And why sevoflurane? Because sevoflurane causes maximum bronchodilation. IV agent, if patient is a controlled asthmatic, then propofol. But if a patient is uncontrolled asthmatic, then we have to give ketamine. For hepatic patients, inhalation agent of choice is sevoflurane. Why? Because it minimally decreases the hepatic blood flow. And IV agent is propofol. Why? Because propofol is negligibly, in fact, propofol, I'll not say negligibly metabolized. Propofol also has got extra hepatic metabolism. Muscle relaxant for asthma patient, you can use anyone. There is no specific choice. And muscle relaxant here is cisatracurium. And if cisatracurium not available, then atracurium. Why? Because this atracurium or cisatracurium, they are metabolized by Hoffman degradations spontaneously in plasma, so there is no risk of accumulation. For kidney patients, renal patients, inhalation agent of choice is desflurane. Why? Because it is negligibly metabolized, so does not produce fluoride, so safe from renal point of view. IV agent again propofol. Propofol does not produce any active metabolite, so there is no risk of accumulation of any active form. Muscle accent again cisatracurium or atracurium, because that is not dependent on liver functions I told you, and guaranteedly metabolized in plasma means no risk of accumulation in renal patients. For neurosurgery, I'll also tell you inhalation agent of choice is sevoflurane. Why? Because it minimally decreases the ICT, minimally increases the ICT. Sorry, all inhalation agent they increases ICT, including sevoflurane, but it is minimal with sevoflurane. IV agent thiopentone, because thiopentone does not causes thiopentone minimally, or you can say, in fact, decreases the ICT, decreases metabolic rate of the brain and decreases ICT. Muscle accent, especially non-depolarizers, they do not cross the blood-brain barrier, so they can be safely used. Anyone you can use. So this is just a brief summary. For cardiac patients, inhalation agent of choice isoflurane, minimal decrease in cardiac output. IV agent etomidate, most cardiac stable. Muscle accent vicuronium. Respiratory, COPD, asthma, inhalational sevoflurane, maximum bronchodilation. For controlled asthmatic propofol, while for uncontrolled or active asthma, we use ketamine. Muscle accent, you can use anyone. Hepatic, inhalational sevoflurane, minimum decrease in hepatic blood flow, or propofol IV, and muscle accent cisatracurium or atracurium. Renal patients, inhalation is desflurane, IV propofol and inhalation. Why desflurane? Because no fluoride. IV propofol. Why? Because no active metabolite. And muscle action tetracycline cisatracurium because no risk of accumulation. Neurosurgical patients, inhalational sevoflurane and IV agent is thiopentone because it decreases metabolic rate of the brain and decreases the ICT. Muscle action non-depolarizer you can use anyone, and that is described in chapter of inhalational agents when we are describing the property of isoflurane. That isoflurane is the inhalation agent of choice for cardiac patients because it minimally decreases the cardiac output. So that was also, you can say, one of a direct question from the notes of Igor Coelho. Which of the following structure is not encountered during epidural anesthesia? Supraspinous, interspinous, ligamentum flavum, dura. Let's tell you structures which are encountered. In fact, that is very important and I think very frequently been asked. So I'll just go in detail. So you will be entering for obviously from the posterior side and this is anterior side. So first you encounter will be skin. So when you are giving spinal or epidural, skin. Below the skin is obviously subcutaneous tissue. Then there is supraspinous ligament, so which connect the tip of spinous processes. This is supraspinous ligament. Then there is interspinous ligament. Interspinous, which connect the spinous processes. Then this is ligamentum flavum, also called as yellow ligament of the body. Flavum actually means yellow. Then the dura. So this is dura. And almost adhere to the dura is arachnoid. So if you are giving spinal anesthesia, you are giving in subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space means after piercing the dura and arachnoid, you will find CSF flowing out, that is spinal. When you are giving epidural, you are giving outside the dura. Epidural is peridural, means all around the dura. Outside the dura. Outside the dura means between ligamentum flavum and dura. So now if you are giving, the question was epidural. So if you are giving epidural, what all structures you are piercing? Skin, subcutaneous tissue, then supraspinous ligament, then interspinous ligament and ligamentum flavum. That's it. If they ask spinal, then obviously you will be piercing dura as well as arachnoid too. Now we can see the question what they had asked. Which structures is not encountered? Supraspinous we do, yes. Interspinous, yes. Ligamentum flavum, yes. Dura, very easy. Actually, dura is very easy question. I think nobody would have got it wrong because dura you puncture, epidural space is outside dura. Even if you knew that, you haven't not, you didn't know anything, you could have answered this question. The choice made it actually a little easy, and that is what notes you can see nicely explained the same. For the resolution there is an issue. This is the same diagram which I have drawn, and after that it is clearly mentioned that what all structures are encountered when you are giving spinal or when you are giving epidural. So definitely I'll say questions were not difficult but not easy too. So if you know the subject, then only you can know the questions. So these are the 5 questions which I could manage to get. If I'll get more questions also, and so we can have another session also. So till then, my best wishes and thank you very much for attending.